Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Inshallah, we will start our lecture for today. So today's topic is diagnostic uses of radiopharmaceuticals, part one. So I would like to know whether everyone can hear my voice. So whether everyone can hear my voice. Just to make sure if everyone can hear my voice, could you just send me a reply to the chat over that live chat on the right side over here? Okay, so I hope, because I know that 5 of you are watching the lecture. We can continue. Okay, so it's going to be two parts. So we're going to have like part one and part two. So part one, I will cover central nervous system, thyroid, and lungs. So it's more of it like the example of the each radiopharmaceutical used in these systems. And on the second part will be next week. We go further than the 4 or 5 systems that we're going to have a look in terms of usage of the radiopharmaceuticals. So the first one, I'm going to go with the central nervous system or CNS. Okay, I'm not going to go for the in terms of like anatomy or physiology. I'm not going to very deep because I think you have learned with Dr. Che Anwar back in when you first year in terms of anatomy of each tissues or organs. So I just go briefly with all of this. So central nervous system or CNS, it consists of two parts, the brain, the skull, and the spinal cord in the vertebral column. So we're going to focus most on the brain. So this on the right side is the brain. So the brain itself, it consists of two symmetric cerebral hemispheres, left and right. Right, which exactly anatomically they are similar, but the function might be different. So these two hemispheres, they are separated by longitudinal fissures. And as you can see on the right hand side here, this is the mid-sector view of the brain. So for each hemisphere, they got 4 lobes, which separated by fissures. So the frontal lobe, this is the frontal lobe, and the parietal lobe. So it is the parietal lobe. On this side, this particular area. Okay, now we're going to look in terms of the brain imaging. So for the brain imaging, the principle of brain imaging is actually governed by a mechanism called the blood-brain barrier, or BBB, which this excludes many. So the BBB itself actually excludes many substances from entering the brain from the blood. So the function of this BBB is a mixture of anatomic phenomena of the brain itself. So the BBB is actually effective in particular instance. So it actually depends on the physical chemical properties of the substance in questions. So this actually based on this principle, how exactly the scientists or researchers do their brain imaging based on this particular principle. So some of the research found that the BBB actually it results from a tight intracellular junction of the endothelial cells in the brain capillaries, or the lack of extracellular fluid space, or the lack of pinocytosis, and also including the limited transport mechanism. So all these combinations actually result in the BBB, what I call the blood-brain barrier. So when we talk about barrier, should we have something that they're allowed to go in and allow or not allowed to go in? So that means that this barrier, so some substances are allowed to penetrate or go through the blood-brain barrier. Water, sodium chloride or salt, or that's some of the examples. However, some compounds are not allowed, or perhaps got some difficulty to penetrate through the BBB, which are the sodium nitrite, the sodium iodide, the bile pigments, and other commonly used radiopharmaceuticals. So radiopharmaceuticals including some of the compounds that are difficult or might not allow to penetrate the blood-brain barrier. However, if you look into some disease of the brain diseases such as tumors, actually can cause the breakdown of BBB, which results in the penetration of related compounds into the brain. So, two of these diseases, these compounds that I said earlier, uh, can penetrate the BBB because the BBB breakdowns due to these diseases. And based on this principle of BBB, actually the radiopharmaceuticals being developed by the researchers or scientists can be grouped into two categories: as diffusible and as non-diffusible. So what are actually divisible? So divisible traces of radiopharmaceuticals, they are actually lipophilic, which means they like the lipid. So, and due to this one, they are really available or able to cross the BBB. So for example, so the example I'm giving here, these are the commonly used radiopharmaceuticals for brain imaging. Technetium hexamethylpropylene aminoxime, or the abbreviation as 99-MTC-HMPAO. So the H comes from hexa, M comes from methyl, P comes from propylene, A from amine, and O for oxime. And the second one is the technetium ethyl cystinate dimer, or ECD, so ECD. And the last one is actin fluorine fluorodeoxyglucose, or 18F-FDG. So the F for fluoro, D for deoxy, G for glucose. Examples, I will just show you two of them, the HMPAO, and the ECD further. Okay, how about the non-diffusive traces? So if you look at the diffusal, it says lipophilic. So it means that logically, if it's non-diffusal, that means it's a hydrophilic, or call it lipophobic. So that means it like water, it hates the lipid, and also it's polar. It means that these traces across or can't cross the PBB, or have or got difficulty to cross the PBB, except in abnormal tissues where I said earlier PBB might be broken due to this certain disease like tumors. So the common traces or the common radiopharmaceutical use non-diffusive tracers is the technetium DTPA, which actually is used in brain death. Okay. So these are the examples of the radiopharmaceuticals for brain imaging. So actually got one more, this 18-fluorine fluorodopa. So you can see based on the characteristics, we can differentiate between the half-life, physical half-life, the photon energy, the usual dosage within millicurie and both in megabecquerel, and usual time for imaging. So we look at the HMPAO, and the physical half-life is about 6 hours. This is due to the technetium. Same with the ECD, 6 hours. The photon is similar, so, and also the usual dosage. But for the usual time for imaging, so because the half-life, photon energy, and dosage actually it depends on the type of the radionuclide being used to label the drugs. And for the time for imaging actually depends on the molecules here, so the drugs here. So you can see for HMPAO, the usual time for imaging is about 0.2 to 2 hours post-administration. And for the ECD, it's about 0.5 to 1 hour post-administration. So these four factors actually depends on the time or the radiopharmaceutical or the radionuclide itself. As for the imaging, actually it depends on the pharmaceutical, the drugs used with it. Here we look at the 18 fluorine. So the half-life of the fluorine is about 110 minutes. The photon energy is about 411 electron volt. The usual dosage for the mercury is about 10 to 15, and it's about 370 to 555 in megabecquerel. As time for imaging, it's usually need 0.6 hours post-administration to get the image. The pharmaceuticals. Fluorine fluorodopa, as you can see, it's about similar. The half-life and the photon energy, but the dosage that you see is a little bit lower compared than the FDG, about 5 to 10. And the time for imaging is a bit quicker compared to FDG. It's about 0.3 to 0.5 hours post administration. Okay, we're going to have a look into the 99M ethylcystinate dimer, or the commercial name is Neurolite. So this is the ECD. So the ECD or Neurolite is actually a neutral lipophilic complex. So they are available neutral. So they don't need modification to make it lipophilic. On itself is lipophilic, even though you do labeling, is still lipophilic. So the ECD, when administered into the patient, it localized in the brain by crossing the BBB. So it cross used via the passive diffusion. So you don't need any active uptake. You just use the passive diffusion. So this ECD, they usually used as a brain perfusion agent. In the brain, they got some enzyme that can catalyze, or what we call enzyme catalyzed hydrolysis, or one of the ester group in this compound, which what it causes this enzyme change the acid group to carboxylic acid. So apologies for the space here. So what happened when this hydrolyze the acid group in these drugs into carboxylic acid, it results in the formation of an ionic complex. Complex cause drugs to not able to diffuse across the BBB. So what happened here, it prevents washout from the brain. So once it's internalized, okay, once it internalized into the brain, when it's localized in the brain, it might react with this type of enzyme, and will not, when it crosses the BBB, once it interacts with the enzyme, I will not able to cross back out from the BBB. So this happen when it crosses the BBB. So what happens when it's internalized the BBB, it forms into an ionic complex and preventing the washout from the brain. That means that it will stick inside the brain, it can't be washed out from the brain due to the anionic complex. So it means that any anionic complex, I mean not just this particular drug, so any anionic compound that if you want to use in the brain, you need to remember that anionic complex. So you need to mean cationic complex to make sure that your compounds for any particular research able to cross the BBB. This is the main a good point here. Okay, so we look about in terms of administration of the ECD or Neurolite. So after IV administration of the ECD, what happened here? The blood clearance of this particular radiopharmaceutical is very rapid. So after 5 minutes, the activity. So the blood activity is meaning the radioactivity in the blood. So after 5 minutes, you will look at only 10% of the radioactivity found in the blood. However, the brain uptake of this particular radiopharmaceutical is very rapid. So it's about 5 to 6% of the injected dosage with very slow washout. So you know the washout due to this reaction. Yeah. Okay. In terms of the ratio of gray to white matter uptake, it's about, so we got more than 2 to 1, so not 2.2 to 1, so we got more than 2 to 1 gray to white matter uptake. As this is IV administration, you know how it goes to the lung and so on. But the lung uptake of this particular drug can be negligible, so it's very, very low amount, so it can be neglected. About the hepatobiliary excretion, so due to a liver, it's about 11%. And if you look at the urinary excretions, we found that radiopharmaceuticals as excreted more than half in the urine, which we found about 55% plus minus 10%, 2 hours post administration, and after 24 hours, 78% of this drug with STD 14% found in the urine after the administration. So that means that the blood clearance is actually rapid due to this excretion by the urine. So 2 hours, 55%. So that's really quick. After 2 hours, you found 55. 24 hours, 78% of it. found in the urine. Okay, look at so how is it been done in the hospital? So we use about 10 to 20 millicurie, so approximate 370 to 740 megabecquerel of ECT. So we administered into the patient intravenous. So this is the point. So don't get confused. You might thought that it might be oral. So because we want to have image in the brain, uh, directly inject directly to the brain. So you might, I said last week, certain tissues you are not allowed to physically administer them because it might cause damage to the tissues. So for the brain imaging or brain diagnosis, we usually do the IV administration. So we don't want any damage happen to the tissue of the brain due to physically administration directly to the tissue itself. So in this case, ECD is administered intravenous to the patient. So for imaging, so we use planar and SPECT imaging, which actually we perform. So we use a gamma camera. So the SPECT, I think you learned it with Dr. Utley before. So a gamma camera is used equipped with parallel Hall collimator with a dynamic or static mode. So for nowadays, we don't use solely SPECT imaging. We use combination of SPECT CT for imaging. The reason why is like the CT images are utilized for attenuation, correction of and vision with SPECT images. So you can do a merged images, both using the SPECT and CT specific to use the anatomy of the tissues. So the non-contrasted images are obtained and SPECT images are taken about 20 to 40 minutes post-injection at 3 to 10 degrees intervals over 180 transits using a camera. So the energy used is, we call it as low energy high resolution or LEHR parallel Hall collimator. So this is commonly used for brain imaging. So these particular properties or settings that we use in the camera is a low energy high resolution collimator. Imaging, usually the data will acquire in 128 times 128 matrix, and the SPECT data will be corrected for attenuation. So the transverse or short axis of CT and the SPECT image are really reconstructed and fused together. So we got this. So what usually you do with CT SPECT images? First, you image the CT scan. So you got the CT image first. So when you've done the CT images, done, we're going to do the SPECT images. So some of the image, I think, the one that I used before in my study, so they were used to use SPECT CT. So we do both. SPECT CT usually not take that long time, but the SPECT will take quite some time. So it depends on how the quality they're going to do. So here we use 128 times 128. So the sagittal and coronal images are generated from these merged images. So they use the software, which also got the appropriate algorithm for that. And if you got abnormalities in terms of perfusion due to infarction, stroke, or tumor, you will show a decreased uptake of the technetium. So any abnormalities happens in the brain, perhaps due to infarction, due to stroke, or tumor, and other diseases, it will cause the decreased uptake of this ECT. So this is the image. So you got transverse, coronal, and sagittal. Click on the side, coronal and transverse. Here you got baseline. So here you can see this in the Caesar patient. So the Caesar focus is indicated by the white arrow, also lateral anterior. And the red arrows indicate the breast cause. So this where you want to focus on the Caesar area. So you can see this actually the scars of the due to the surgical. So you can see here that because surgical, that means your physical contact to the tissue, the brain tissues, you can see it causes some damage or changing to the white matter of the brain. You can see the color is blue, you don't see any activity. So you don't see any activity found to this drug. Okay, next we go for the hexamethylpropylene and aminosin, or HMPAO, or the commercial name Certec. So as I say, same with the ETs. With the ECT, it's a lipophilic moiety, it's also diffused to the brain by consider the BBB. However, when it goes inside the brain, it converts it into secondary complex. So what happened here, this serotype will react with glutathione, which glutathione is hydrophilic. So glutathione, it causes it become hydrophilic, and once inside the brain, will not back out of the brain. So that's the good thing. So you want it not to go out. You want it to trap inside the brain. Okay, the same thing, IV injection. So similar with ECD, the blood pressure is rapid, interface activity in the blood about 12% post 1 hour post administration. The brain uptake about maximum of 4% within 1 minute. So that's really, really quick of the uptake. About 1 minute, you got 4% of uptake in the brain. So due to this reaction to glutathione, only 50% of the brain activity wash out within 2 minutes post injection. So and the activity is remain plateau over a period of 24 hours. So this is really good. So you got 50% of the activity in the brain, which keep for 24 hours. So you can have a long 1-day image using this drug. And the advantage compared to ECD, the excretion in the urine post after 24 hours. However, you'll find the soft tissue, liver, and the GTI uptakes 10%. So that's some of the disadvantages. You found a little bit high uptake in other tissues. So how is it they do the same amount of dosage, about 10 to 20 millicurie with the ECD, intravenous. Usually we use with the altered cerebral perfusion as in stroke. And the same imaging method, you use the SPECT CT with LEHR collimator. So instead of imaging, it's the same step, the same method they use, same with the ECD. Okay, this is the image that you got with the SPECT image. This is actually mid-transverse slice. So it is the left and right brain. You can see that it got a decreased uptake in the left hemisphere. So this is a patient with stroke. So it got some damage of the brain tissue on the left side due to the stroke. You can see that a very decreased uptake of this particular pharmaceutical. So you know that actually happens of the brain tissue damage due to stroke. You can see it's also around this side. Okay, how about okay, that's and for brain imaging. Now we look at what we call it as cysternography. So the cysternography is actually used to investigate the rate of formation, the flow, and also the resorption of the CSF. What you found here is any obstruction in the cerebrovascular system will result in abnormal circulation of CFS. So any obstruction, it might caused by the hydrocephalus, the CFF leakage, or other similar condition. So this will cause the abnormality or obstruction into the system and also resulting in the abnormality circulation of CSF. So interphosysternography, the commonly used radiopharmaceutical is 111 intermediate DTPA. So the cheaper one, intermediate DTPA, is commonly used graphic. Okay, how is it used? So approximately 0.5 millicurie or about 18.5 millibecquerel of DTPA is injected into the patient. So it is not IV. So what happened here? Because we are looking at the spinal fluid. So meaning that we're going to do administration at the lumbar puncture, or we call it subarachnoid space. So lower bottom of your spine, that's where you inject the drugs. So what you do with imaging, you got a gamma camera fitted with medium energy collimator. So the imaging we perform post 4 hours or 24 or 48 hours after injection. So how this able to do? Because we use 111 into DTPA. So the 111 into DTPA actually the physical half-life is quite long compared to technetium. And so it's allowed the activity even after 14 hours in the CSF. So that's why this kind of long image procedure is able to be done using this particular radiopharmaceuticals. So in terms of imaging, The views that they use is anterior, posterior, and lateral views. Um, Also, with this, you can also use spec images if it's needed, but a normal gamma camera is enough to get the image. So in normal conditions, so for normal patients, so without any abnormalities, you will observe the activity in the basal systems, in convertices, and the parasagittal locations. So this is in normal patient. You will see all this activity in these three locations of the activity. However, in the case of normal pressure hydrocephalus or NPH, you will see the activity will reflux into lateral ventricles. And after 24 and 48 hours, you will not observe any activity in the convexity. Supposed to be, you observe the activity in convexity, so activity of DTP, DTP. However, due to this disease or the NPH disease, even after 48 hours, you will not observe any activities in convexity. So you know they got some. So, for example, you don't know what kind of patient. So you observe you administer patient. You don't know whether the patient is in the normal condition or not. And then when you do the administration, you observe for 48 hours. You found no activity in these convexities, so you can give uh, okay, this patient might got in NPH disease in this particular area. Okay, how about with patient in CFF leakage? So, so usually what you do, you use a cotton patches. So you place in the nostril for about 24 hours after the lumbar puncture administration, and then after 40 hours, remove at the end of study. Uh, then you would check the activities in the pages, and you will measure the blood comparison. If you observe if the platelet activity is greater than the blood activity, about 1.5 or more, you will suspect this patient got CF application. So this not so you want to know whether this patient got CF application or not. So you do the lumbar administration. At the same time, after you finish administration, immediately you put the cotton pages at the nostril in the nostril of the patient. After 24 hours, you take it off, and then you check the activity. You take some blood, take the activity in the blood sample, also the pressures. So you compare both of these activities. So if you got the high activity pledge 1.5 and more compared to the blood, this patient is suspect by CF application. So and then use a gamma camera scintigraphy to locate where the actual site of the CF leakage. So in this case, if you want to locate where the actual site of leakage, which is a larger dosage, so it's about 2 to 3 millicurie of the intermediate TPA. So compare it 4 times to 6 times more of the normal usage of the normal dosage of the India. Okay, how about in patient with obstructive hydrocephalus? So usually when patient got obstructive hydrocephalus, they will implant it with ventricular atrial or ventricular peritoneal shunts. So they will implant it with these two devices. So what happened in this patient? So use a same mercury, 0.5 millicurie, in the reservoir or the tubing unless such condition. So you will not inject to the lumbar. You will set in the reservoir or the tubing, but make sure it's antiseptic. And then the passage of the tracer will be observed by the gamma camera. So if in the case of shunt patency, a rapid passage of radioactivity throughout the shunt, just after 30 minutes or 1 hour. So you will observe this. So that's how actually we do. So it's quite different. So look back for the NPH. If there's NPH symptoms in the patient or the suspected with NPH, after 24 hours we not found activity in the convexities. So for CFF leakage, you will find that a higher activity in the pages compared to the blood, and the value is 1.5 or more. So if below 1.5, it's fine. It's 1.5 or more, you will suspect it the CFF leakage. For the patient with obstructive hydrocephalus, you will see activity in the shunt after 30 minutes or 1 hour after administration. So that's how you learn. Okay, now we look at the second system, the thyroid. Okay, in the thyroid. So first, we need to understand how a thyroid looks like. So this is the image of thyroid. You got the brains. So in normal humans, okay, everyone will have two lobes of thyroid below the larynx. So one both sides, on the right, on the left. Remove the thyroid due to some infection and so on. But normal human will have two thyroids. Are connected by what we call isthmus, so lying near the surface of the neck. So it's connected. That. So what is the primary function of thyroid? So I'm not trying to scare for those who might already go for removal of the thyroid. It just is what's the normal function. So you might find some difference in terms of your body and so on due to after removal of the thyroid. So normally the function of the thyroid is actually to regulate rate by controlling the synthesis and secretion of the two important thyroid hormones. Sorry. So the thyroid hormones actually triiodothyronine or T3 and thyroxine. So these two hormones are produced by the thyroid. So what are the functions of these hormones? They act as stimulants to all metabolic processes. So which you can reflect it by increased oxygen. So any metabolic process involved in your body is actually stimulated by these two hormones. Okay. And as I said, it will reflect it by increased oxygen consumption, also heat production, and this hormone actually is essential for growth and sexual maturation. So, if you remove your thyroid when you were before you come to the age, what happening? There might some disturbance in terms of your growth, in terms of your sexual maturation. So, post if you're like an early teenager also will affect. So happen. With studies that say what actually found if you move the thyroid when you become an adult, so you can have a look in the papers or journals about that. Okay, when we talk about thyroid, so diseases are actually, you know that thyroid are associated with iodine uptake. So any diseases related to thyroid usually is related to iodine uptake. And also the other one is the functional status of the thyroid gland. So they got two, either related to iodine uptake or the functional status of the glands itself, and so on. Is when your thyroid produces too much or excessive amounts of T4 or tyrosine, we call the condition as hyperthyroidism. So when you have too much of T4 produced in your body, what happened here? It will cause increased appetite, restlessness, hyperactivity. So somehow, if you have these symptoms, eat too much, restlessness, and you're so active, even though like you slept just for 3 to 4 hours, you might consider yourself might have this kind of called hyperthyroidism. Just go straight have your doctor, okay? Okay. Another thing we call is endemic goiter. So endemic goiter is actually formed when you got a deficient iodine in your diet. So you eat less, or you got less iodine deficient, or you don't eat that much of something high with iodine like seafood and so on. It will cause you got endemic goiter. So what happened here is it will cause some inflammation to your thyroid glands. So that will happen. So usually how you counter this one, you can consume a lot of iodine in your diet, preferably from a natural food. I know some of you might got allergic to the iodine, but that might cause you to the low or deficient iodine in your diet as well. So alternatively, you can have the supplement for iodine. But I always say to my students, my friends, anything you should consume naturally from the food. The supplement and so on is just a substitute. Not consume from the food. Don't make the supplement as your main diet. Okay. Okay. What about they got some severe hyperfunctioning of the thyroid, where you call this thyrotoxicosis, or esophthalmic goiter. You can have a look in the Google. Just go look how does it look like. Okay. In thyroid, we all usually use 1:1 iodine or 1:1 123 iodine sodium iodide as the radiopharmaceuticals. So I think I talked a little bit earlier before, but we talk details how is it used. With the brain for the thyroid, no, it's different with the brain. So brain using the IV administration, but for the iodine, we use oral administration, both in case for 131 iodine sodium iodide and also 123 iodine sodium iodide. So what happens when after oral administration, the iodide will be absorbed through the intestine. And after absorption, the level of the blood, the level of activity in the blood will reach a maximum within 3 hours. So of the dosage will be excreted by the kidneys. Okay, so that's really only a small fraction is excreted in feces and sweat. In the for urinary excretion, it's more 50% 24 hours after administration. So that means that only small percentage of the sodium iodide will reach to the thyroid. Most of it will excreted from your body. So 2 tests will be performed after administration, what we call it the first radioiodide uptake and also imaging of the thyroid glands. How about the optic test? So what do? You administer, so you prepare about 10 to 15 millicurie of either for the 131 iodine sodium iodide, or in case for 123 sodium iodide, use about 100 millicurie. So the dosage is about 10 times more. And then you will prepare the dosage in capsule form, and then place them in thyroid phantom. So what you do, the activity in counts will be measured with a thyroid probe of sodium iodide, titanium, crystal, polymetal of lead, and this will be placed at the same distance as the patient will be seated for the optic measurement. So you got the capsule in thyroid phantom. So what you do, you put this capsule in the distance same when the patient will be seated for measurement. So what you do is to use for the room background. And also you want to subtract any phantom counts. So this is just first before patient, you have the capsule. Example, you put the patient will be sit about 1 meter from the imager from the camera. So you put that capsule and then you count the activity. And here you will not just count the activity of the phantoms, but also count the activity of the room background. So you will deduct all of this. So this is what we call the net standard count. And after that, you do the capsule or capsules are then. So what you do the capsule or capsules depend how much capsule you prepared. Give oral to the patient. You will do the uptake after 6 or and 24 hours post administration. So post 6 hours, you're going to you do the test. Yeah, and 24 hours, and then another one. So after 6 hours, the patient will be seated as what we do with the phantom before, and then you will count the activity in the thyroid using what we call the thyroid probe. A thyroid count is taken as well, and you will subtract it from the thyroid count to correct any extra thyroidal activity. So for normal values for thyroid uptake, for normal patients or for normal people, you will find that 10 to 35% hours, 7 to 20% after 6 hours in both cases of the radiopharmaceuticals. So if got some very low or very high of uptake when you observe at 24 or 6 hours, that means there's some error that happened to your thyroid. Okay, so 10 to 25% 24 hours, 7 to 20% for 6 hours. So this is the range value of normal people. So in thyroid scan, so now we do the count already, and then we're going to do imaging. After oral administration, you will obtain the image 24 hours, but the dosage for imaging is quite different. So if you remember, for this 131 iodine sodium iodide, for the count you only use 10 millicurie, but for imaging you use 100 millicurie, which is 10 times more. And in case for the 123 sodium iodide, for count, you just use about 100 millicurie, but for the imaging, you use 3 times more with 300 millicurie. So usually for imaging compared activity, higher amount of dosage in any case of radiopharmaceuticals, because really it's a very high activity to give a good image of the tissues or organ. Okay, what you do, so use a gamma camera, also with pinhole collimator. And this actually image is good. Why you need the image? You need to assess the structure of the thyroid, the position, also function. If the thyroid, for example, if you got the carcinoma thyroid or hyperthyroid, image will give you whether it's good or still have good functions. If some elements happens, you might got some diseases that affect your thyroid. So this actually the image using the 131 IDA, 24 hours of administration. So this is a normal one. You can see quite well distributed between both thyroids, both left and right. So if it's found if you don't find any uniformity in your image, or perhaps like too low on left and very high on right, very low, or too high, or very concentrated, you got something to happen to thyroid in terms of functions, in terms of structure or positions. So then you need to go see doctor for further studies. Okay. However, if you under a certain drugs, okay, for example, you're on the medication of this drug, but you can have a look about this. You can't do any thyroid in terms of uptake or even in terms of imaging because this drug inhibits the uptake of this 123 sodium iodide. So if you are these other medications, uh, you need to wait for a certain time before you can do the imaging. For example, in T3 or any steroids or hormones or penicillin, after 1 week, then you can do imaging. For iodides, about 2 to 3 weeks. But for example, in contrast media used for the bronchography, myelography, optography, you need to wait more than 1 year before you can do the 131, 123 sodium iodide. It's not just you need to make sure that you know what are the medication you are under influence right now before you do the diagnosis. Okay, that's end for the thyroid. And then we go for the lung. Sorry, you can ask questions later. You can have a look. I will go through very quick. I think about 10 minutes left. Okay, now about the lung. Okay, what's the structure of the lung? We don't just go focus on the lung. It must start from the respiratory tract. So we start from the nostril. So this nostril, and then we'll pass through the pharynx and then through the trachea in the neck. So nostril and orals got both here, the larynx, and then don't go to the esophagus, this go for it first. Go to the larynx and go to the trachea. End of the trachea, we call it as the larynx. And then when we go through the trachea, we can divide, the lung we divide into two branches. So the branch we call it the bronchi, which is bronchi, will go into each lung. So one bronchi, one lung. Okay, the bronchi will branch into bronchioles. So the bronchi, you got the bronchioles. It's much smaller branches. And then the end of the bronchioles will probably got the alveolar sacs. It is alveolar sacs. So in an adult, so you got about 700 million of alveoli. So this alveoli, which actually provide a surface area almost 18 meters square. So that's really, really huge of surface. So you might not see that it's very, very small, but we got 700 million of it. So about 350. I'm not sure whether it's 350, 350 for each lung, but total of two lungs is actually 700 million. Okay, for lung imaging, these are the commonly used radiopharmaceuticals for lung imaging. You got the MMA, technetium MMA, you got the 1,3 xenon, you also have technetium aerosols. So you got, in terms of the physical half-life of this, for technetium, you can see 6 hours. For the xenon, it's about 5.3 days, just a little bit quicker compared than technetium. And the effective of the half-life for the MAA, about 2 to 3 hours, aerosol 0.67 hours, but xenon we can't have. Photon energy, both in aerosol and MAA about 140, but for a little bit lower, 80. Okay, the dosage. If you use MAA, you use about 2 to 4 millicurie, but for aerosol, a little bit high, about 30. As for the xenon, you use about 10 to 15. So for imaging, when you want to start image, So in all three radiopharmaceuticals, immediately after you administrate, you will do the imaging. Because the reason why the physical half-life is very quick, 6 hours or 5.3 hours. So if you like very laggy in terms of imaging and so on, you're not gonna get accurate image because like you might pass the half-life without you realize it. So for in terms of usage, for MEA used for prevention studies, and an aerosol used for ventilation study. Okay, we can go for the prevention study or prevention imaging. So it's actually based on the trapping of large particles in the capillary bed of the lungs. So what happened here? If for particles larger than 10 millimeter, they will lodge in the capillaries in the first pass of circulation through the pulmonary artery after IV administration. So for this one, use IV administration, not oral, not local, not topical, it's IV administration. So for preventive imaging, as I said, commonly used is the MEA, so the full name is microaggregated albumin. So that's commonly used. Administer this one with MEA. So about 2.4 millicurie of this MEA. So particle size about 10 to 90 millimeters will be IV administered to the patient. So the patient must lie in supine position. So go look how the supine position look like. So you can't do this but if they're sitting. I will talk why you can't do this when you're sitting. Okay. Up in the supine position after administration, 95% of this pharmaceutical so it's really good. So you've got about 5% be excreted from your body or might distribute to other tissues. But most of it, 95%, are trapped in the lungs. So the half-life of these particles is about 2 to 3 hours. After 2 to 3 hours, the particles are broken down to smaller ones by the mechanical movement of the lungs and also some enzymatic action by proteolysis. After broken down by these two mechanisms, it will remove phagocytes into RAS system. So after we go to our RAS system. So how do you got the image? So your team immediately after injections are using gamma camera fitted with low energy, all-purpose, say parallel collimator. What you do, you place over the lung field. So I'll talk why we need the patient must be supine. The reason why you want a uniform distribution of the particles throughout the lung. So you administer while the patient is seated, okay? So what happened here? All the particles will be localized, not all, I mean, greatly or like very high will localize in the low parts of the lungs. Why it happens is due to gravity. So gravity do affect. So it will cause uneven distribution of receivers in the lung field. So the image that we got might overwhelm so much and you are not really got a correct image because you got most of the in the bottom of the lung. So you don't know actually the particle activity in the bottom of the lungs is due to some diseases or actually because of the sitting position. It is left side is the normal lung. On the right side, a patient with multiple pulmonary embolism in both lobes of the lungs. So the RPO is actually right posterior oblique, post is posterior, LPO left posterior oblique, RL is right lateral, anterior, and left lateral. So you can see it well distributed in both lung or if you see at the posterior here. But in case for some disease, in this case pulmonary embolism, you can see that the drug is not distributed well. Some left, at the bottom, or the top, you can see this is what happened. How about ventilation studies? So what does it mean ventilation studies? So ventilation means actually a study of respiratory. So you want to check the respiratory function of the lungs and to whether you got a proper ventilation of your lung. So what happened here? The radiocarbon imaging studies will indicate whether you got any presence of any obstruction in its areas. So if you got an obstruction in your areas, like tracheal, bronchial, bronchus, and so on, the radiopharmaceutical will give you the. So the commonly used for ventilation studies is xenon gas, nitrogen xenon gas, technetium labeled aerosol, or technetium technic gas labeled aerosol. So for the labeled aerosols, the size of the aerosol we use here is about 0.5 to 3 millimeter. How is it produced, the aerosols? So you use nebulizer. So you nebulize the technetium DTPA or any other technetium products you want to use, which actually is commercially available. So use about 30 millicurie of the technetium DTPA in 3 ml. You will place in nebulizer. So, and then after that, in the nebulizer, you will force air or oxygen about the pressure about 30 to 50 psi. So this will allow the production of aerosols. And then by using nebulizer, the aerosol droplets will be inhaled by the patient through a mouthpiece. Okay. For information, this nebulizer is it's not reusable. So it's just a one-off. It's disposable. One finished, you dispose it. After, okay. So aerosol will be inhaled by the patient through mouthpiece. Inhaled should be exhaled. So what? So in this case, you inhale an aerosol, meaning that your exhale page will also contain some aerosol with radioactivity. What happened here, the exhale air from the patient will be trapped in the filter attached to the aerosol unit to prevent any contamination of the surrounding area. So only 10%, about 10% of the aerosol will be deposited in the lung of normal patient. And it really remains airborne and aerosol. So inhale the droplets. 10%, if you got a normal lung, 10% will be the lung, and 90% will go out from the aerosol. Deposition also depends on size, shape, density, and charge of aerosol particles. So larger particle will tend to settle in the central area of the lung, and small particle will deposit in the peripheral area of the lung. If you got the activity too much or too low, there might some abnormalities happen to your lung. So the biological half-life of these aerosols is about 0.75 hours. So for smokers, okay, you got very short biological half-life because the LVO permeability is changing. It's increased the permeability. So after 5 to 10 minutes of inhalation of the patient, the aerosol will be disconnected, and because it's disposable, you need to store it first. So we use the decay in storage method before we dispose it. And after that, the patient will be imaged in different projection using gamma camera, same low energy variable collimator. So this is the image that you got. So in normal lung, wide distribution, particle in center, small particle at the peripheral. Okay, that's it for today. So for today, we just end until lung. So for next week, in the next, so as I said, the lecture will be, there's no lecture anymore this week, so I won't be in Kuanta. I'll be go to KL this evening, this afternoon. So the next lecture will continue on next week. And I know I said to you last Friday, I should give you the title Friday. I'm still waiting titles from Dr. Adli and Dr. Husna. So I try to push. I will confirm with them again by today. I hope by this evening I release the title from them. If not, I'll give before I go back to KL. If there's no title yet from them, with all the 7 titles from me, including all the information about the presentation. No worries, it's very simple presentation, not very deep. Like also, it's just a simple presentation of how it is all the topics. It's actually related to all the topics of lectures that we went through throughout the course. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, email me this week. I'll try to reply to you. I might have some limited access of the internet, but I'll try to reply. You might not immediately, but in the evening, because I have the workshop from 8 until 5, from tomorrow until Thursday. So I'll try to reply in the evening immediately to you. So any question related to the oral presentation, just ask me. Or next week, just come to my iPad. We can discuss further details about the outline, the draft of the presentation. As I said again, the oral will be assessed by external examiner, not me. So thank you very much. So that's it. Good luck in your studies. So see you around next week. Okay, bye bye. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi.